What would you do if everything in your life was trying to break you? Your childhood, your body, your own mind, and the only thing standing between you and total collapse was you. This is the story of a man who was born into hell and decided to build himself into something that hell couldn't touch. His name is David Goggins, and this book, Never Finished, is not a self-help book. It is a warning, a wake-up call, and maybe the most important story you'll hear this year. Let's get into it. Back in the 1950s, a scientist named Dr. Kurt Richter did an experiment with rats. He dropped them into tall cylinders of water and watched them drown. Without hope, most gave up within minutes. But then he rescued some of them right before they quit, toweled them off, let them rest, and dropped them back in. This time, they swam for 60 hours straight. One swam for 81 hours. What happened? Goggins says it wasn't hope that kept those rats going. Hope is too soft, too fleeting. What those rats found was belief, a deep, unshakable certainty that they would survive. And belief, the real kind, isn't something anyone gives you. It has to bubble up from inside, forged through layers of pain and exhaustion. David Goggins was born with holes in his heart, sickle cell trait, and a childhood straight out of a nightmare. His father, toughness, was a violent man who beat his mother, his brother, and David on a regular basis. They lived above a roller rink and worked late into the night as children just to survive. Eventually, David and his mother escaped, but the damage was done. By the time David was 24 years old, he was 300 pounds, working as a cockroach exterminator and slowly unraveling. He had no self-respect, no direction, and a habit of quitting whenever things got hard. Then one night, he made a decision that changed everything. He drove to Buffalo, New York, to look his father in the eye one last time. He told himself he was going to find closure, but on that drive, with nothing but the highway and the silence, he realized the truth. He wasn't going to Buffalo for answers. He was going for an excuse. He wanted someone to blame for all his failures. But sitting in that Denny's booth watching his drunk, broken father rant and rage, something shifted. David saw that toughness wasn't the devil. He was just a damaged man who never dealt with his own pain. And as long as David kept handing his power to that man, to that past, he would never be free. The second voice in his head, the cold one, finally got loud enough to hear. It ain't your fault you were dealt a bad hand, but it is your responsibility. How long will you let your past hold you back? That night, driving home, David made a choice. He chose resilience. He chose to stop being a victim of his story and start writing a new one. Here's something paramedics learn early. When someone is injured, the most dangerous thing isn't always the worst-looking wound. There's a term called a distracting injury. It's when something looks so bad that you focus on it completely and miss the thing that's actually killing them. Goggins says most of us live with distracting injuries. We get so fixated on what happened to us, the abuse, the failure, the rejection, that we forget to look at the real problem, the habits we're choosing right now, the corners we're cutting, the quitting we keep doing. Your trauma is real. Your pain is real. But at some point, you have to ask yourself, am I using my past as a reason to grow or as an excuse to stay stuck? The clock is always ticking, and every dream comes with an invisible expiration date. After escaping Buffalo, David and his mother landed at his grandparents' house in Brazil, Indiana. His grandfather, Sergeant Jack Gardner, was a retired Air Force Master Sergeant who ran his house like a military base. No coddling, no sympathy, just a daily task list posted before sunrise. Every morning, sweep both porches, rake the leaves, weed the gravel driveway on your hands and knees, wash all 4 cars until there isn't a single water spot left, mow the lawn in a perfect grid. No attaboys, no allowance, just the work. At first, David hated it. He was a traumatized kid who'd been beaten and abused. He wanted someone to hold him and tell him it wasn't his fault. Instead, he got a man banging a metal trash can lid next to his ear at 5 in the morning. But something happened over time. David stopped just going through the motions. He started caring. He started noticing when a car had streaks on the glass. It bothered him. He started taking pride in doing the job right the first time. That feeling, that quiet, private pride in doing excellent work was the seed of everything that came next. Then came the day that cemented Sergeant Jack forever in David's mind. A Ku Klux Klan member showed up on their front porch, threatening David. Sergeant Jack opened the door with a pistol on his belt, looked that man dead in the eye and said, "The only problem we're going to have is a dead Klansman on my front porch if you don't get off my property." The man turned around and left. And another time, a car hood slammed down on Sergeant Jack's hands, crushing fingers on both sides. He walked calmly inside and said, "Morna, I think you'd better drive me to the hospital. No screaming, no drama, just steel." David realized, this is what I want to be. Discipline doesn't just make you better at tasks, it rewires who you are. When you show up every day and do the hard thing, especially when nobody's watching, you start to become someone you can actually respect. And self-respect, real self-respect, is the foundation everything else is built on. By the time David decided to become a Navy SEAL, he was nearly 300 pounds. Doctors said he had about 3 months to lose 100 pounds to qualify. He worked out 6 to 8 hours a day and ate almost nothing. And while his body changed, something else happened inside his mind. He started treating every hard workout not as just physical training, but as a mental experiment. He stopped asking, "How much more can my body take?" He started asking, "How long can my mind hold on before it tells my body to quit?" He calls this his mental lab, an internal space where you dismantle your own excuses, test your own limits, and build someone new. Here's what the lab taught him. Most of us stop at about 40% of what we're actually capable of. The body sends signals, tired, sore, uncomfortable, and the brain interprets them as stop. But those signals are not the finish line. They're just the beginning of the real work. When the mind wants to quit, that's when you're just getting started. The mental lab is available to everyone, but most people never enter it because they're afraid of what they'll find inside. The insecurities, the laziness, the weakness, and so they stay outside, living half a life. Goggins went inside and didn't come out for 20 years. Let me tell you about a moment during David's second Hell Week, the most brutal training in the US military. It was day 2. He'd barely slept. He was freezing, his lungs hurt from a recent bout of pneumonia, and a massive wave just slammed him into the sand. His mind snapped. For a moment, he didn't want to be a Navy SEAL anymore. He wanted to go home, and he was about 30 seconds away from walking off the beach forever. What saved him? He took a deep breath, then another. And in that moment of oxygen, his brain clicked back online. He flashed forward. If he quit, he'd be flushed out of the military and sent back to Indiana, back to minimum wage, back to the cockroaches and the shame. He made what he calls the 1-second decision. Not a grand epiphany, not a motivational speech, just one decision. I will not quit in this moment. And that was enough. Life isn't built on years or months. It's built on seconds. The second you decide to stay instead of go. The second you decide to get back up instead of lie there. The second you choose your future instead of your comfort. When everything falls apart, when the pressure spikes and panic sets in, take a breath, take a mental knee, and ask yourself one question. What happens to my future if I quit right now? That answer is usually enough. Here's a tool David uses that almost nobody talks about. He records himself. When he's feeling weak, when the excuses are bubbling up, when the voice in his head is convincing him to take the day off, he picks up his phone and speaks it all into the microphone. Every complaint, every justification, every whine. Then he plays it back. And 90% of the time, he's off the couch and moving before the recording even finishes, because hearing your own weakness out loud is one of the most powerful wake-up calls there is. He also uses this for trauma. He's spoken his darkest memories into a microphone and listened to them over and over until the story lost its poison, until it stopped being a wound and became just history, facts, data. He even turned hateful comments from online trolls into a mixtape that he listens to when he needs fuel. Most people are afraid to look at their own darkness, but the only way to stop something from controlling you is to face it directly. Speak it, hear it, take its power away. Whatever haunts you, say it out loud. Record it if you have to. Then listen until it can't hurt you anymore. By 2019, David Goggins had done something almost no one expected. His book, Can't Hurt Me, became a massive bestseller. He was a sought-after speaker. Life was comfortable, and comfort, he realized, was quietly killing him. He still worked out twice a day, but he was, in his own words, a part-time savage. He did hard things when it was convenient. He checked boxes. He coasted on old victories. Then a doctor asked him to run the Leadville Trail 100, a 100-mile race in the Rocky Mountains. He hesitated. He made excuses. He almost said no. That hesitation scared him more than the race, because the David Goggins who built his life didn't hesitate like that. He signed up. And what happened in those mountains, the brutal climbs, the false summits, the moments where he felt genuinely broken, reminded him of something he'd forgotten. Suffering is not the enemy. Suffering is the classroom. Every hard moment is giving you information about who you are, about what you can handle, about where your real ceiling is, which is almost always higher than you think. He finished Leadville, and the fire came back. The Moab 240 was the next frontier, a 240-mile race through the Utah desert, more remote, more brutal, more complex than anything Goggins had ever attempted. And things went wrong almost immediately. His pacer failed to download the GPS app correctly. They got lost, running 15 extra miles off course. His thyroid medication ran out. He developed high-altitude pulmonary edema, his lungs filling with fluid, and had to leave the course after 215 miles with a DNF, did not finish. For a lesser person, that's the end of the story. You go home, you lick your wounds, you tell people you tried. But at 3 in the morning in a rental condo in Moab, Goggins woke up with one thought: you're not done yet. He woke his crew, he called his doctor, he got clearance, and he went back out and finished every single remaining mile. No official finish line, no record, just a telephone pole on the side of a highway where he crossed his own personal finish line. 255 miles total, alone with traffic rushing past. Here's the lesson. When life hits you in the mouth, you have two choices: stay down or get up. But here's what most people miss. You don't have to get up at full speed. You just have to get back in motion. Even at a walk, even with a broken body and a DNF on your record, the only true failure is the one where you stay down for good. In 2020, everything fell apart again. His left knee, already battered from decades of ultra racing, gave out during wildland firefighting season. The MRI showed the knees of a 90-year-old man. Multiple tears, broken cartilage, bone damage. Then the surgery that was supposed to fix it made everything worse. He went from running 200 miles at a stretch to barely making it down a flight of stairs. And David Goggins had to learn a new skill: how to respond when you can't fight back with physical force. His answer was 2 words: Roger that. In military terms, Roger that doesn't just mean I heard you. It means I received this, I've accepted it, and you can expect results. He said Roger that to the collapsed knee, to the botched surgery, to the doctors who told him his running days were over. And then he got on a stationary bike. 3 weeks after the surgery, still on crutches, he rode 30 minutes in excruciating pain just to prove to himself that he was still in the fight. Then he signed up for a 444-mile cycling race. 13 weeks after the surgery, he finished second. The lesson isn't that you need to be crazy. The lesson is that no matter what life takes from you, there is always something you can still do. Always a next move, always a new version of your best. You don't need to find your old self, you need to find your new one. Goggins talks a lot about who you let into your life, what he calls your foxhole. In combat, a foxhole is your fighting position. The people in it with you can mean the difference between life and death, and in real life, it's the same. The wrong people in your foxhole will talk you out of your dreams. They'll hand you permission to quit. They'll be comfortable with your failure because it confirms their own. The right people won't let you lie to yourself. They'll drag you to the starting line when you don't want to go. They'll sit in the cold with you while you practice for 6 hours on a skill you can't nail. They'll hand you a Pop-Tart at mile 215 and say nothing, because they know you're still in the fight. Be very, very careful about who you allow in close. Not everyone who loves you is capable of supporting your growth. And if no one in your life qualifies right now, Fight alone until they show up. It's better to be in a one-man foxhole than surrounded by people who need you to stay small. And then, at 47 years old, with a metal plate in his tibia and a surgeon who told him he'd probably never jump out of a plane again, David Goggins became a smoke jumper. Smoke jumpers are airborne wildland firefighters. They parachute into remote wilderness to fight fires before they become disasters. It is, without question, one of the hardest jobs on the planet. Rookie training was brutal. The PLFs, parachute landing falls, meant throwing himself onto frozen Canadian ground over and over while his bruised ribs ached and his surgically repaired legs screamed at him. His fingers went numb in the cold every time he had to practice the letdown, rope rappel, the skill you use when you land in a tree and need to get down fast. He couldn't feel the webbing. He kept failing the timed test. So, every night he went outside. He put his hands in the snow until he couldn't feel them. Then he practiced the knots until his mind and hands worked in sync without sensation. He shaved 3 seconds off one night, 5 the next. Slowly, stubbornly, relentlessly. He made the time on test day. And several weeks later, he stood in the open door of a DC-3, a refurbished World War II aircraft, over the boreal forests of northern British Columbia. Smoke rising in the distance, a lightning-caused fire burning below. He stepped out, his parachute opened, and his leg held. I wish I could fully express what it's like to defy the medical mind, to parachute into wildfires at 47 years old. All I can say is, I hope you feel this one day. Here is what David Goggins wants you to take from all of this. You are not finished. Not after the bad childhood, not after the failure, not after the surgery, not after the DNF, not after the doctor's report, not after the divorce, the bankruptcy, the diagnosis, or the breakup. There is always another evolution, another version of yourself waiting to be uncovered. But it requires something. It requires that you stop waiting for permission from your past, from other people, from circumstances, and decide that your life is your responsibility. Every day you stay in the comfortable, in the convenient, in the barely trying, is a day you give away. Sergeant Jack had a task list. Goggins has a mental lab. You need your own version of that. Wake up, do the work. Not because it feels good, not because someone is watching, not because it's easy, but because you exist. And existing means you have an obligation to find out exactly what you are capable of. The mission is never finished. Neither are you. If this resonated with you even a little, I really encourage you to pick up the full book. It's called Never Finished by David Goggins. The link is in the description below. If this story hit you, if even one part of it made you think differently about your own limits, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment about one thing you've been putting off because it felt too hard. And then go do that thing, because the work doesn't wait, and neither does your life. Stay hard.